Welcome to another episode of Ola at Large, Aliyah Stories. Welcome back to Ola at Large, Aliyah Stories. This is David Levine. I'm very excited to welcome the guest for this episode, Juda Honickman. Juda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
You're welcome. So, Juda, you live here in Israel. When did you make Aliyah?
So I made Aliyah in 2012, I believe, about 13 years ago.
Where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from New York. I grew up in Far Rockaway, then Lawrence, then Woodmere, then Israel. There was like a running joke in my family that if we ever left Far Rockaway, we were going to make Aliyah. And then we moved to Lawrence. So those who know the geography out there.
That's not very far.
At least it's closer to the airport. So at that point, I was like, all right, family, if you guys aren't doing it, I'm going to make it my mission and I'm going to do it at some point.
How old were you when you made Aliyah?
I was 25, I believe, 25.
Okay. And what was your life like leading up to making Aliyah? What was going on in your life and what made you decide to actually make the plunge?
Yeah. So, for me, I think it's maybe an interesting story. I always knew that this is where I was going to live. It was just a matter of when and how. From the youngest ages, I remember my first trip to Israel. I was about 3 years old. And, I just remember walking the streets of Israel with my grandparents and just feeling the sense of like home, the sense of comfort, the sense of safety. And I chased that for many, many years. I did Birthright 4 times, once as a participant and 3 times as a counselor, because I wanted to keep coming back. And it was the cheapest and easiest way for me to do it while I was a student, while I was young. So I just kept coming back. And every single time I got on the plane, Ben Gurion, to leave Israel, I had this feeling of, when am I coming back again? Like, why am I leaving and when am I coming back again? And it became this chase for me, but not in a negative way that I was chasing something, this positive chase of, okay, I know this has to be a goal of mine. When and how could I make that happen?
And what were you doing in the lead up to making Aliyah? Were you working? Did you have a career already or were you still in school?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't have a set career at the time. I was doing a bunch of sales and marketing stuff, mostly freelance. I was also at the time working in nightlife. I was doing events in New York City, which was a massive anchor holding me back from moving forward. But it's how we were paying the bills, as they say.
And what was the tipping point to actually make Aliyah? Did you make Aliyah alone? Did you do it with family?
So that's a very interesting story as well. The tipping point for me was I was working in this restaurant at the time. I wasn't working in the restaurant, but I was working for a restaurant, helping them set up school programs, basically an alternative to the hot lunch programs, in New York. And just, you grew up out there, like, where they're getting greasy chicken and there's nothing healthy about the lunches they give in school. So I was working with this restaurant and we were creating this alternative to the hot lunch programs they were getting. And we were bringing in salad bars and fresh paninis and wraps and all these other things. It was very, very successful. A bunch of the big schools in the 5 towns and Queens, people were taking it and it was a great option. At that same time, my wife, an Israeli girl, came to New York, realized that she needed a job if she wanted to be in New York for the summer. She was 18 at the time.
Oh, so she's not your wife yet?
Not my wife yet. She got a job at that restaurant. And literally on our first date, I said to her, we're getting married, right? And obviously she had no idea how to respond to that. But for me, it was just worlds colliding. My dream of wanting to move to Israel, finding this girl that I felt, for me was very, very attractive and I was very, very connected to. And to me, it was just like God saying, okay, let the games begin.
Amazing. So you basically proposed to her on your first date. And how long did it take for her to say yes?
It took a while because, we had a great summer together and running around New York and touring, and she was working and I was doing, and we were, and at the end of the summer, she said, okay, I'm leaving. I'm like, what does that mean you're leaving? So I'm going back to Israel. Like, that's where I live. And it was this like massive blow to me at first of like, okay, I guess, is this happening? Is it not happening? So I went to visit her shortly after in the fall. And then I came back and then she came back to visit me again. And I went back to visit her again. This was over the course of like a year and a half. And finally, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I know I want to make the move. I know that I want to do this. I know this is where I want to be. I just got to bite the bullet and do it. And that's what I did.
So did you propose to her first? Did you make Aliyah first? What happened? This is a great story. I love this.
I mean, I proposed to her on her first date, but...
Well, right, exactly. But you re-proposed? Did she just accept at some point?
Well, the big joke is I still never actually proposed to her aside from that first date. But that's a different story. I came to Israel when I made that decision. Okay, I'm going to feel it out a little bit. Like I didn't want to do Aliyah from abroad. I wanted to come here and like get my feet wet and things like that. And the interesting fact about my life, I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol 19 years now. And when I decided that I wanted to move to Israel, I was like, okay, I found the girl, I think. What am I going to do work-wise? And literally the next day, I got a call from a buddy of mine. He said, Juda, I'm opening like a halfway house rehab-style program in Jerusalem. Any chance you want to come out here and run the program with me?
Oh, wow.
Literally the next day, David. And I'm like, yes. He's like, well, do you want to think about it? I said, nope. It was like a week before Tisha B'Av. I said, book me a ticket for a week after Tisha B'Av. So I had 2 weeks, packed up my apartment, and just made the move. And I'm like, still at that point, I was like, let me feel it out. Let me see if it's relevant. I've been here a lot to visit. Can I live here though? Can I do the makolet thing and the language thing and the buses and all the logistics of it? So I came, and about 6 months maybe after I came, I started the Aliyah process and did it from within Israel.
Amazing. So I also did it from within Israel. It felt fairly easy. We didn't get the fanfare of, the parade at the airport when it finally happens, but it was pretty easy for me. How did you find it?
I found it extremely easy. I mean, there was some like chasing that I had to do, but that was just on my side in terms of like, oh no, where's my high school diploma? And, my vaccination card or my parents', wedding certificate. But that was on my side and, my inability to keep my things organized. But from their side, I mean, they were very on top of everything and the process was great. It was smooth. We got our benefits, and the benefits actually really, really helped us because, as I'm sure you can imagine, working in a drug and alcohol treatment center, we weren't making a bank, as they say. So when I got those benefits, it was really what allowed me to start my life with Tanya, with my wife, who I proposed to, who I asked to marry me in a way. And, shortly after I did, I finally got my Teudat Zehut and we started our lives together out here.
You got married after you got your Teudat Zehut?
Yeah, we got married after we got our Teudat Zehut. Correct.
Amazing. So remind me again, what year is this?
This was 2013.
Okay, not too long ago. I'm trying to think technologically what would have been available like there is now in terms of Google Maps and Google Translate and all the various tools that you can use. What was it like?
The big thing for me was move it, like how I get around the country. I didn't have a car at the time. So it was just like, okay, how do I get from A to B and B to C and C to D and all that other fun stuff? But, I found it relatively easy to do. And I obviously learned the roads and the bus lines as time went on. Obviously, I have a car now, so I'm not reliant on buses anymore. But interestingly, I did not learn Hebrew when I first made Aliyah. I worked with Americans. This treatment center was for Americans. My job after that was marketing for a startup to Americans. And my job after that was also working with Americans. So I had this, this kind of like bridge that, it was way, way, way too long. But this bridge holding me to my English language and not pushing me to where I needed to go in terms of learning Hebrew. And interestingly, after October 7th, this is many years later, is when I first really started jumping into learning Hebrew. Because of when I made Aliyah, I didn't do the army. Because I made Aliyah after 26. They said, maybe we'll call you, whenever. They never called me. And after October 7th, all my buddies in the community, everyone left. As I'm sure you can imagine, everyone went to Miluim, everyone back to service. And I was literally looking around the park one day with my wife and kids, a few weeks later. And I'm like, I'm the only dude here. Like, there's nobody else here, and I need to do something for this war. What can I do? Where can I do? How can I do? And I just started doing barbecues for soldiers. So I got together a group of people who also, either couldn't do the army or didn't make Aliyah yet or whatever else it was. And I literally started traveling the country 3-4 times a week sometimes, doing these massive barbecues for hundreds of soldiers. And that's what really pushed me to learn Hebrew, surrounding myself with almost solely Israelis and having to communicate logistically about barbecues and locations and driving and food and hechsherim and cups and plates. And I literally turned into like a volunteer catering service overnight, and which pushed me to learn Hebrew.
Was it grilling for IDF?
No, we did our own thing. We had a website, barbecueforsoldiers.com, bbqforsoldiers.com. We slowed down a lot. I actually have, right before Sukkot, I have a barbecue for 550 soldiers that I'm doing. A donor basically called me and I just kind of connected them and I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it now as actively as I was before.
Right. So you have not done any kind of formal Ulpan?
No, and it's interesting. My brother just made Aliyah, now it's 3 weeks ago, with his wife and 2 kids. They live around the corner from me. And my suggestion to him, and what his goal is to learn Hebrew before he has to jump into the work life. And he said, between the Sal Klita and my savings, this and that, I can get by and take these next 2-3 months to learn Hebrew. So he's going to be doing that, which I think will greatly help him later on. The alternative obviously is just jumping into an Israeli world where your friends are Hebrew speakers and you learn it. But I think it's a massive tip for Aliyah to work on that Hebrew language.
Yeah, I agree. I've been here for a year and a half and I've done Ulpan in fits and spurts, and it's definitely a challenge to be able to not have the full command of the language. So in addition to working at the center, what else have you been doing on top of that?
I've been doing a lot of work in marketing and sales. I'm CMO of a sports technology company, consulting for a bunch of other companies. I'm actually working with an art gallery right now, doing some really cool stuff. But again, still, even though I have more of a command of the Hebrew language, I'm working with mostly Americans. But I'm not as fearful of it now as I was before to work with Israelis. Great example, last night I had a work dinner and they were both Israelis. It was me and the two of them. They not only, but I would say 90% of the time speak Hebrew. And I was able to go and do it and navigate that relationship in those conversations.
That's great. How are you able to make connections here in Israel in terms of the additional work you're doing? Maybe without so much of the language, but still being able to make the connections here and do additional business.
Yeah, one thing led to the other. I didn't come here with any sort of formal training. I never graduated from college. I never finished college. I always thought to myself that my goal was to work with the addicted population, with Jews specifically who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, because it's something that I went through. And I always thought that was my be all and end all. And then like I said before, when I got married, I realized that I wasn't making enough money to support a wife and eventually children on that salary. And I started branching out and I, went online and I looked for little things. And my first job outside of that was this answering Facebook comments for a startup in English. And from answering comments on Facebook for the startup in English, 6 months later, I became the head of marketing for that company because of, my ability and my skills and my knowledge. And then from there, I just leveraged it up. I kept meeting different people, telling people what I do. I don't think there was ever a conversation in my early years. Sarah wasn't like, by the way, this is what I do. If you think of anything, if you need help, please let me know. And I just put myself out there in a way that allowed me to kind of climb that ladder.
And having you use social media to either learn more about Israel or make connections in Israel or make more connections for you in your business?
So it's interesting, even though my background is in marketing and you would think that it's natural to have some sort of a presence on social media, I never did. My social media was always pictures of my wife or where I am or my kids or the occasional look at this great steak I'm eating, even though I'm not big into the posting the food thing. But, only after October 7th did I really build a social media presence. I think I have, 20, 30,000 followers right now. And it's all because of, again, my putting myself out there in terms of my love and my belief in our ancestral right to this land where we live. So I never really used social media for personal or professional connections in that regard. It was always just friends and family kind of thing until more recently.
So talk a little bit more about making that transition into doing hasbara. How would you define the word hasbara?
Creating pro-Israel content that puts, a good light on Israel, sharing Israel's light, Israel's message. I don't think there's an actual real definition for it that I'll know of at least.
Yeah.
But all of those things kind of fit into that category.
And so after October 7th, you decided that this is something that you wanted to do. You wanted to use your skills and your social media to do that hasbara.
Well, I was never passionate about anything enough to put myself out there. It didn't really interest me to make videos about marketing or whatever else it was that I was working on at the time. But shortly after October 7th, I saw this trend on social media. If you're on social media, maybe you'll remember it. It was a trend called, "Will you hide me?" or "Who will hide me?" And the trend was referencing, the times of the Holocaust. And if this happened again, October 7th happened again in America or somewhere else, who will hide me? Will you hide me? And I took to my Instagram and it still drives me crazy to think about it. I'm like, nobody needs to hide you anymore. We have a Jewish state. We have an army that's willing to go to bat for you. Yes, things like October 7th could happen. And unfortunately, they did. And there will be a time to look at how that happened and why that happened. But if you are a Jew anywhere in the world, nobody has to hide you anymore. Just come home to where you have an army of Jews protecting Jews, putting their lives on the line for Jews. And again, October 7th, terrible disaster. There will be a time to figure all of that out. But I think we learned from that lesson, and that trend drove me nuts. It drove me through the roof. And that video went like semi-viral. And then I created another video 2 days later and another post 4 days later. And it just became this machine that I was putting out all this content.
Amazing. Well, you've been doing amazing work, and I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to be on the podcast. I can very much relate to what you're saying. It was after October 7th that I made my decision to make Aliyah. So yeah, it was something that was very formative for me as well. All right. So anything else that you would want to share about your journey, or any tips or advice that you want to give to someone who is considering making Aliyah?
Do it.
Just do it?
Do it. Come, ride the difficulties, live the beauty, because it's here. It's all here. Like, you know, I tell people all the time, my children, well, specifically my daughter, because she's old enough, she's learning Navi right now. Like, when I grew up and I was learning in school, like, it was this foreign thing that we were learning. We were learning about something that happened in this land over there. But like, I took my kids a few weeks ago to Shiloh to like walk in the actual site where the Mishkan was. And I took my kids last week, 2 weeks ago, up to the top of Herodian to like see where Herod built his fortress and where Bar Kokhba's revolt happened. Like, there's nowhere else in the world that you can go to live the history of the Jewish people other than here. This past summer, we were in Vermont for a couple of weeks, and I asked a local guy, what's a really cool thing to do? He's like, oh, go down to this and this path. If you walk down and make a right, you'll see the old train tracks that they used for mining 250 years ago. And I'm like, 250 years? Like, my backyard is thousands of years old. And you're telling me 250? Like, it doesn't excite me, because this is the history of the Jewish people. And if you're in America and you're learning American history, they give you a book and it's all about 1776 and the Constitution and this and that and everything else. You open the Tanakh and that's the history of our people. And it happened here. And if anyone wants to live in authentic, Jewish, real, connected to the Tanakh life, there's only one place to do it, and that's here.
Amazing. Thank you again. And so tell the listeners how to follow you, how to reach you on social media, what they be looking at.
At Juda Honickman, JudaHonickman. Simple as that.
Juda, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. So every episode, we have a word of the podcast. So it's an Israeli word, some slang that if you don't live here or if you're new here, you might not necessarily know. So Juda, do you have a word of the podcast for us?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit, David. I'm going to phone a friend, my wife who's in the next room, who grew up Israeli, the one who I am married to but never actually proposed to, like we spoke about earlier. Tanya, can we get a slang word from you?
Achla Yehuda.
What does Achla Yehuda mean, for those who don't know?
It means, Yehuda, you're a good man.
It means I am a good man. It's a good thing for a wife to say to her husband.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Juda, and your lovely wife.
Thanks, David.
And thank you so much for your time today. And please keep doing all the great work you're doing.
Amazing, David. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. For this episode of Ola at Large, Aliyah Stories, I want to thank my guests and I want to thank you. Thanks for listening. Please give a like, give a follow, and catch you next time.